Hello and welcome to another episode of the After School Club with myself, Max Pembleton. Now today we're joined by Kerrie Henton, and Kerrie is an executive principal at the Stone Soup Academy. Stone Soup is an alternative provision academy based in the heart of Nottingham city centre. It is a truly amazing place. Kerrie has done a fantastic job building the academy over the last few years. The team, they're super passionate about helping young people and meeting the needs of those that fail to thrive in mainstream education. So I hope you enjoy listening. Here we go with Kerrie Henton. Hi Kerrie, how you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Thank you so much for joining us on the After School Club podcast. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy lady. So first of all, can you just explain to the audience what is your role here at Stone Soup, and also what is Stone Soup?
Okay, so Stone Soup Academy is a free school academy. We were set up in 2010, and we're one of the first alternative provision free school academies to be set up.
Okay.
And we meet the needs of young people that fail to thrive in mainstream environments. So they might be excluded or they might be at risk of exclusion. And we work with over 25 schools locally from students that haven't been excluded, and we work with the local authority, the city and the county as well. And my role is, it was principal, and I've now just recently moved to being executive principal.
Oh, okay, amazing. And what is the difference, if you don't mind just explaining for the audience, between principal and executive principal?
Well, I'm still sort of learning that myself. But what it is as an academy, we've grown massively. Since joining the academy, we only had about 45 young people when I joined in 2018.
Oh.
And we had about 24 staff. And now we've got 45 permanent staff, and we've got 110 young people. So
Wow.
we've grown massively. But in order to grow and expand and continue to look out there for what we can do, we've now moved on to 2 sites. So we bought, I don't have pockets that deep. We bought a new building, which we completed in December of
Congratulations.
of last year. Thank you. And I project managed that to where we are today.
Yeah.
And so the executive part of it is really about being able to face outwards. There's a lot of operational stuff that has to happen inside, looking inward, making sure that the students are getting what they need to, they're making progress. And although I have continued to have oversight of all that, I have a very excellent senior leadership team who work with me, and they focus on the sort of day-to-day operational. And so it gives me the opportunity now to look out and see what we can do and how we can develop, one of which is the sixth form that we've spoken about.
Great. Yes. Yeah, we did. And I must say, the building you've got here is amazing.
Oh, we're so proud. I mean, it is an amazing space. I don't know how much you've seen of alternative provisions. Have you been to many alternative provisions?
Yes, I have. Not many like yours, I must say.
They can be varied, very varied.
Yeah, they are. And, I do want to get into the detail of exactly what you do here, what you offer here, what the building actually consists of as well. So we'll get into that. But just before we do, I want to rewind all the way back. And,
It's a long way.
It's a long way. I want to go on a little bit of a journey and, ultimately find out how you've ended up in the role that you're currently in. But before we get to that, what was your school experience like, and where did you go to school? How did you find it? Just tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I started off my education in a little primary school in a little village. And so I started off there, and it was fine. I mean, I enjoyed it. It was
In Northampton, was that?
This was Northamptonshire. This
Right.
was a little village called Brigstock,
Okay.
and it was a little village primary school, and I went there. My mum was a teacher as well, and she used to travel into Corby where she used to teach.
Yeah.
And so we lived there for 5 years, from when I was 5 to when I was 10. And so I went to that primary school during that time. And yeah, it was it was nice. It's just a little village primary. But it's funny because, you start thinking back to sort of what you experienced. And I remember in those days, the way they used to teach you to read, this was my recollection of it, was that you used to have to take your reading book and you used to have to do this long walk from the classroom all the way across the sort of playing field to get to the hall. And you'd go into this big hall. It was big when you were in a primary school, you're a little kid. And you used to have to sit beside this teacher that used to be sat in this table, this singular table in the middle of this hall, and you used to sit and read to them.
Sounds daunting.
Oh gosh, it was daunting. And I don't know whether for me, my reading was okay, but I imagine if you were struggling, it would have been massively intimidating.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if you were finished your lessons, you were allowed to do something fun in the corner, which is what I remember. If you finished your maths, you could go and play.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it was nice times, happy times.
Great. And then from primary school, then I think you mentioned you were in the area for 5 years. Did you say?
Yeah, 5 years, and
Yeah.
then there was in the country there was a fuel crisis, and I think prices went up massively, and the cost of my parents being able to commute into Corby, which would have been I don't know, about 5, 6, 7 miles away, I think became too much, so they had to sell the house, and then we moved into the centre of Corby.
Right.
Corby was a steel town, a different sort of offering, and I went to a Catholic school there,
Okay.
and I joined midway through primary,
Right.
which I think was a challenge.
It's always challenging. Yeah.
Well, it was challenging, and I think that there was some bullying that was going on there. I experienced that myself. I can remember still to this day that fear of not wanting to go into school, or certainly worried about that walk home, what was going to happen after school.
And that was at primary or a
That's
secondary?
primary.
That was primary.
That's
Wow.
primary, yeah. But then good times. I mean, that was mixed in with the good times. I mean, my memories of lining up for dinner and getting things that were luminous in terms of custard of different colours that went with different sort of puddings. And you don't sort of remember the lessons, although saying that now we're talking about it. It was nuns, and my God, they were vicious.
Nuns that were
teaching. It was a Catholic school, Catholic
Right.
primary.
Right.
So they used to be there in their black sort of things.
Yeah.
And it was before the days where you weren't allowed to hit students. And you'd get, there was one particular, Sister Anthony, I think her name was. I think she's no more. She was quite old then. Although saying that, when looking back, she was probably only
Yeah.
she seemed very old. And if you did anything wrong, you'd get a wooden ruler across the backs of your knees. And she used to confiscate all your sweets, and she'd have a cupboard that she used to have all these sweets in.
Yeah.
And then she used to give out your sweets as end of term prizes.
Oh wow. Wow.
So it was madness.
Yeah. We've absolutely come on leaps and bounds, I think, from where education was.
Just a bit.
But I'm really glad that you started speaking about the memories and everything, because what I'm looking to do is actually pull some of these memories out of you as well. And I want to go on to ask you, was there a particular teacher or a particular nun or role model that actually really made an impact on you, either for the positive or the negative? And how has that impacted you now since you've left school?
Yeah. There were few teachers who certainly I remember. Do I remember them for the right reasons? I'm not sure. We had it sounds terrible now, but in the context of which we all work, you think, dear God, we had one particular teacher who was an art teacher, and one of my best friends, she was larger than life and probably quite a handful to manage in a classroom. But I remember he used to make her stand up on a chair on one leg because she hadn't done something right. I mean,
Right.
absolute intimidation
Yeah.
and bullying behaviours. But there had a lot of teachers that wanted you to progress. Did they do it in the same way that we do it now? Was that same pressure to get results? No, I don't think there was. And so I think you didn't get the same pressure on you to have to perform in a certain way. I can't really. We used to have another teacher who used to, and he was great. He was a maths teacher, and he used to in the lesson he had a lot of character, and if you weren't doing something right, gosh, you'd get a piece of chalk flying at you, and if you were really unlucky, the board marker
Really? Across the classroom?
across the classroom. Oh
Oh.
gosh, yeah. No, you wouldn't. You really wouldn't do anything wrong. And they used to do the cane then as well.
Yeah.
Luckily, I never had
Never had it.
No,
Good.
no, but I'd see these lads going along that sort of walk of shame and having to queue up to go into the head teacher to
You
get.
couldn't imagine it today, could
No,
you?
gosh, no. I mean, it was terrible. One of our teachers, we used to be. Now this makes me sound really, really old. But they in the Catholic school, they used to teach Latin. We only did it in the because there was a lower school and an upper school. In the lower school, we used to be taught by this lady, and I remember one day we were doing Latin, and she marked the homework, and she came. She thought I was somebody else in the classroom, and she came around and clipped me around the head. And I just sort of a very meek remark. I said, "I'm not Amanda." She went, "Oh, sorry, girlie," and then went off to berate this other child.
It's crazy.
It was crazy times. How I ever
Well, I'm glad to say it's very, very different these days,
It is.
and
Completely.
we'll get into how you operate as an academy, today. You mentioned more, I guess, a little bit about primary school there, and not so much about secondary school. What was your secondary or upper school experience like? And then the stage of where you left school. Did you know what you wanted to do when you left school?
Yeah, gosh, no.
No.
No, I didn't have a clue. Secondary school was fun. I'd then sort of established my friendship group. I would just tootle in, do my lessons. I think again there was far less pressure
Yeah.
for students to perform.
Yeah.
There was less pressures, I think, on the teachers in terms of their results, and as a result, they were much more laid back. I mean, that was at the point where teachers could smoke in their offices.
Yeah.
And I used to, and the plumes of smoke that used to come out of the staff room, if you ever went or had to tentatively knock on the door to speak to somebody, they'd open the door and there'd be this plume of smoke that would come out.
Yeah.
So I got to know a lot of the teachers. I'd go and perhaps sit in their office, have a chat, especially when you got to sixth form.
Yeah.
We had our sixth form common room,
Yeah.
which was great fun. And I mean, I didn't come out of school with any great qualifications at all. I did the bare minimum, I would say. And I had parents that were busy and working, and there just wasn't pressure, I don't think.
And you just enjoyed the experience.
I just enjoyed it. And went to sixth form at school.
Yeah.
And then did 1 year at a local college. Then couldn't figure out what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Was sure that I didn't want to go to university at that point. And so then sort of went into work really immediately after.
What was that work?
Well, work again, wasn't sure. Did a bit of sales, did a bit of this, did a bit of that. Wasn't really sure. Hadn't really found my niche at all. And did some ad sales. I was an estate agent for a short while. Then went into recruitment and worked for a couple of big recruitment consultants. And then from that, one of the jobs that I brought on as within recruitment, I thought to myself, "Oh, you know what? I fancy it. That sounds quite good. So what for that job?" So I sort of sold myself into this job, and that was marketing. And I really enjoyed that. But I thought to myself, after doing that for a year or so, I thought there was something there that didn't feel fulfilling. I needed something, and I've got quite a low boredom threshold.
Mm.
And I just couldn't see a life of just doing that same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, what can I do? And I knew I sort of enjoyed making things. I enjoyed doing stuff with my hands. And I'd got a design technology, well, I'd got a DT qualification at A level. And I thought, well, what can I do? And my mum was a teacher. Well,
So that's where it came from,
yeah,
your mum.
yeah. Nice holidays.
Yeah.
What? Seems like perhaps I'll give that a go.
Yeah.
And that was sort of the start of me as I am now.
Amazing. And what age were you then when you made that decision?
25.
Because you'd already got some, work-life experience. So
Which
then
I think is really important, Max. Absolutely. I worry about students that go straight from school to university to school again. And especially if they go back to the school that they were educated in.
yeah, it's almost like they've never left.
It is, absolutely. And I think it's important to get out there.
Yeah, I agree. And actually, what I find in my line of work is quite often the people that have that journey that you've just spoken about tend to then come out of teaching quite early on. Generally speaking, not in all cases, but we work with a wide range of people where actually when they've got other work experience and other life experiences, I think it really, really helps them relate to different students in the classroom.
Yeah.
So it brings me on to my next question, which I was going to ask a little bit later, actually. But seeing as we're here, what is it that you look for in members of staff and particularly teaching staff here at Stone Soup?
That is a really difficult one to put your finger on. Of course, there's the normal qualifications. So we'll take that as read that if we're looking for a qualified teacher, we need that certain qualification.
Yep.
A lot of it is down to that feel in an interview. That because it's working in an alternative provision is not easy. I mean, I spent 18 years in mainstream before coming here. And perhaps what I would look for in a teacher in mainstream is not what I'd look for in a teacher in alternative provision.
Okay, so can you just explain then, for those that maybe don't understand, what would you say are the main differences between mainstream and alternative provision?
Right. So in mainstream, you can get a high degree of compliance from the young people, but when they come into a classroom, you can teach. So you don't have to manage behaviours. In fact, a lot of schools now, especially in trusts, have got so much in place to support behaviour in school that sometimes the teacher won't have to deal with behaviour at all. It'll be going through their system, and the child is removed to another area so that the teacher can teach. But in alternative provision, a teacher has to be many things. They have to be a teacher. They have to be an entertainer. They have to be somebody who is on the top of their game for behaviour. They have to be super resilient. They have to be a social worker. They have to do so many more. It's a multifaceted role, really, for everyone who works in an alternative provision to do that well. But then what has to surround all of that is kindness. You've got to be kind. You've got to have an understanding of the journeys that these young people have gone through, and to understand that the behaviours that they exhibit are their way of communicating. And it's not that that's them. It's the fact that they've just experienced so much, and they've experienced so much rejection and so many experiences that have been negative, sometimes through no fault of their own, and sometimes because of the behaviours that they've grown up with exhibiting, then they in themselves create that sort of feedback that can be negative to them that they're having to live with.
Mm.
And so it's a far more challenging role.
Hmm.
Now, I caveat that with, of course, we're dealing with much smaller numbers. You might have 8 to 10 young people in a class.
Okay.
Whereas in a mainstream school, you could have up to 30.
Right.
So if you're an English teacher in a mainstream school, yeah, you might not get those behaviour issues that have to deal with. But of course, you've got workload still
Yeah.
of a massive amount of books that you need to mark and you need to feedback and all that sort of that's associated with that.
Yeah.
It's a different sort of pressure in an alternative provision.
Yeah.
And that sometimes is very difficult for a teacher who's worked in a mainstream and has those expectations from mainstream to come into an AP, sometimes
Yeah.
having to sort of change their view somewhat.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions really. So when you're interviewing for an alternative provision, you've kind of just described a certain type of person that you require. How do you spot those qualities upon meeting someone for the first time?
Well, I could throw that back at you and say, how do you do it? Because
Yeah.
we all do it.
Yeah.
We make those judgments on a person's personality pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
But you start having those sorts of conversations.
Yeah.
And I know that if I have somebody who is particularly meek and nervous,
Yeah.
but I don't think this will be the right place for them.
Yeah. Body language, I think, is
Yeah,
a massive
and
one.
because you don't want them to actually be to have a bad experience.
Yeah.
So when I'm interviewing somebody, I'm not only thinking about the young people, but I'm thinking about the impact of working in an AP will have on the mental health and well-being
Mhm.
of the person I'm interviewing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you don't want them, a new candidate to come in and this be their first experience of teaching,
Yeah.
and actually on the back of that never want to teach again because of the experience that they
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
with the young people. So it's really important that you get somebody who's got a bit of oomph,
Yeah.
somebody that you can tell has got bags of resilience,
Yes. Yeah.
because resilience is it.
Yeah.
But we know that relationships, when somebody says about what's important about people who work here
Mm.
and what makes the difference to
Yeah.
Stone Soup,
Yeah.
and it's relationships.
Yeah.
Because if you can't have those relationships with the young people,
Yeah.
then why will they do anything for you?
And quickly being able to build that rapport
Oh,
with the
absolutely.
students.
Rapport.
Yeah.
So personality really helps.
Yeah.
Not taking things personally,
Yeah.
because, you will get some abuse.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I mean, speaking from first-hand experience, as you know, I work with students from alternative provisions on a Friday, and it's funny actually. I take it with a pinch of salt, but sometimes you do get a little bit of abuse.
yeah.
What one of them said to me the other week, "Is that your car?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "It's." I won't say what he actually said, but he said it's a load of rubbish. Yeah, and I laughed. I said, "Oh, what car have you got?" But we had a bit of banter about it and stuff, and had long hair before. I got a bit of stick for that.
Yeah.
So that was a funny one. And one of my other questions actually is two. So how can someone prepare as best they can to come and work in an alternative provision? And on the flip side, how can yourself as an academy help continue to develop their skills whilst being here?
Yeah. So how can somebody prepare? I think it's great if somebody's had multiple experiences of different types of students working with them,
Yeah.
and working in different environments. So I think somebody that comes from or has done some work in supply can work really well.
Yeah.
So because they've experienced different young people.
Yeah.
If somebody has worked in a really quite compliant mainstream school, that's not to say that they wouldn't be excellent in an AP, because it's about their personality.
Yeah. And them as an individual.
And them as an individual, and they could bring those skills and that enthusiasm. So somebody who comes in and sort of fills the room and fills the space is great.
Yeah.
But then equally, we've got staff here that are more sensitive, and some of our students will gravitate to them because they need that sort of support.
Yeah.
So we don't look for, it's not a one size fits all.
Yeah.
We've got to have a range of different individuals, because you can't have somebody who is very much black and white.
Yeah.
This is the way it is, or you need to go.
Yeah.
We might have a number of those, staff, but then interspersed with staff that are very caring and sensitive.
Yeah.
But
Mixture.
absolutely, you've got to have a mixture. It's like in any environment, because you're dealing with a mixture of different young people. So you've got to be able to support each and every one of them.
Yeah, great. And your journey then, obviously you're an executive principal now of Stone Soup Academy, but you didn't start as a principal.
God, no.
And you mentioned technology. I think that was kind of your subject area. Can you just tell us your journey of working in mainstream for such a long time to then thinking, actually, I want to leave mainstream now and I want to go to an alternative provision. How did that come about? Just talk us through that journey and how that happened.
So I went to university in Nottingham. So I went to NTU
Yeah.
and did a 4-year course, a B.Ed in education with secondary education, design technology. And so that was amazing. Loved that. And through that, I had different placements at different schools locally around here. And then my first job was as a design technology in a middle school in John Fernley, I think it was, in Melton Mowbray.
Right.
And so it was a small, relatively small school, and I was in charge of the design technology department. So I taught all the young people, as a form tutor.
Yeah.
Had to prepare, we had no sort of technician, had to prepare all the wood and all that sort of stuff. And really enjoyed it, managed to get sort of my feet under the table, managed to sort of learn a bit. But it didn't feel like enough. It was at a time where people were doing SATs in year 9, and they were building up and putting a lot of emphasis onto SATs, and SATs was the be all and end all. And I just thought to myself, I'm not sure if it is, and I'm not sure if this is just where I want to be. So I did a year there, and then I thought, no, I think I need to work in a secondary school. I need to get a bit more experience, a bit broader. So I applied to a school, the Ferris School in Higham Ferris in Northamptonshire, which was post back to moving home, and I went back to Northamptonshire where I grew up. And so I was there and started off as a teacher of technology and taught graphics, metalwork, woodwork, electronics.
Right.
And learnt the ropes, learnt the politics that goes with being in a school. And then in there, I got promoted to a second in faculty, technology, and then got promoted to head of faculty. And then again, I was thinking, well, what next? What can I do now? There was no opportunities within that school to move on.
Right.
And you come across people who sort of shape you, and who shape you either in a positive way or a negative way. And I came across a couple of people who shaped my decision in perhaps a negative way.
Right.
One of them being a senior leader at that point, and he was new, an assistant head, so the first rung of the ladder. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to...
What was it that person did?
I just think a bit of a misogynist, not particularly pleasant, and used his power not in the right way.
Yeah.
And so I just didn't enjoy that, and I disagreed with it, and I stuck up for myself, really. But then I thought, you know what, I need to move on, and probably got to the level where I felt I can do this and I can do what you're doing, and I think I want to sort of experience that for myself. So I applied for assistant principal in a Catholic school.
Right.
And I was appointed to that post, and my God, that was my biggest learning experience by a mile.
And what did it teach you?
Oh, humility, I think, for a start, because I'd got to the top of middle leadership.
Yeah.
And by that point, I had probably become a bit arrogant,
Yeah.
thought I knew it all. You know, I had it down, no problem, been through Ofsted inspections, done really well. And I thought I knew it all.
Yeah.
And I also thought, and it helped me to reflect back onto my experience of being in the previous school and my interaction with the assistant principal.
Yeah.
Because I probably, to a certain degree, became him.
Right.
In terms of thinking that my power that I had as assistant principal was enough to make people do what I wanted them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I quickly realized that it didn't.
Yeah.
And it actually, you go back to that relationships, and that you need to have relationships with people, and they need to see that the reason that you want them to do things is for the benefit of the young people.
Yeah.
And so I had to change. I had to really do a complete change around.
Yeah.
And so I did that. As when you join a senior leadership, you tend to be dumped on with everything that nobody else wants. It's sort of from the top down,
Yeah.
really. And so I would be responsible for all manner of different things. And so, but it gave me a great sort of breadth of experience dealing with data, dealing with reporting, dealing with teaching and learning, quality of education. The only thing I never really dealt with was behaviour.
Right. Okay. Interesting.
It
Yeah.
was. And, you know, I in those days, in that context, I thought, obviously saw the young people struggling in that school,
Mm.
but they would be the remit of the SEN department, and they would be those young people who were clearly struggling, but I didn't see it at that point, were an inconvenience.
Mm.
And that's how the school saw them. And, you know, if they weren't going to do what the school wanted them to do, they would just be,
They weren't interested.
they weren't interested, they'd be kicked out.
Yeah.
And in my sort of narrow side of what I was doing in the senior leadership team, I thought nothing more about it. Which is strange, isn't it? And it just shows the experiences that you have.
Yeah. So at some point, you must have thought a little more about it to be now sat in the seat that you're in. At what point did you think, actually, you know, those type of students that you're referring to, they need more support? You know, I need to help them.
Well, that only happened really when working in alternative provision.
Right.
So I was then now vice principal. I've been at the school for 8 years, and by 8, 9 years, something like that. And we've been through 5 head teachers.
Right.
School was struggling,
Yeah.
and they couldn't find a head teacher that was worth their salt at all.
Mhm.
And so the last one that we got was just a horrendous experience. It's, for me, for everyone really. It was just awful. She was a bully. She appointed her own family to the school, who weren't very good.
Right.
She was unethical. Oh, just everything was awful about her. And
How not to be a head
it
teacher?
was. And you know, all I'd ever wanted, if I'm honest, was somebody to mentor me, somebody who I could, as a principal, I could look at and learn from, you know?
Yeah.
And that wasn't that experience.
Yeah, and I imagine you've taken those experiences along the way and now built a team here at Stern Soup Academy that actually they've got all of the values, all of the morals that you need them to have, that you want them to have. How does your team work at the moment here at Stern Soup Academy?
My team, the team, the staff, everyone here is amazing. The culture is superb. It is kindness personified. They treat these young people as though they are family, and that's what we talk about at Stone Soup Family.
Mm.
And they do, they care about them so much, and that's evident in their day-to-day interactions,
Yeah.
how they work with them in the classroom, how we work with them every year, how we work with them when they've got a behaviour issue.
Hmm.
Now, that's not to say that there isn't a line that they can't cross, and we do have expectations of rules, etc.
Yep.
So, it's not softly, 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 but it the way that they work is so professional. It has a profound impact on the young people.
Yep.
Um, they are they give their time up.
Mhm.
They go above and beyond in every situation.
Yep.
If I asked any member of staff to do anything to do with the academy, they would do it with, because they know that it's for the right reasons.
Yeah, and I think you certainly get a family feel when you're walking around the building, and you can see just how the members of staff interact with the students.
It's amazing. They are amazing.
What I particularly like is, as soon as you come in, you can see your vision and your mission, so to speak. Can you just talk us through that? And what is the vision for Stone Soup Academy? And I think I know why, but why do you have the vision plastered all over the walls everywhere you look? 'Cause I love it.
Is the vision's creating unimagined futures, and that is really around the young people coming to the academy. You see them when they come for a visit before we actually take them on.
Mm.
They're looking at the ground. Their parents are looking at the ground. They think they've failed. They don't think they can achieve anything. They're unhappy. And we have the privilege to change that. And we've got the privilege to enable them to have futures that they didn't think were possible. And we do that on the day to day. It's really evident when you look at their attendance, when you look at their results, when you consider that 100% of our young people last year got 7+ qualifications, including English and maths. And we're talking high quality qualifications.
Mhm.
We put the bar high. So you've got your GCSE English, your GCSE maths, GCSE art, photography, BTECs,
Yeah.
a whole raft of qualifications that they can get. And from those qualifications, we then get them into college. Last year, we only had 3 young people that were NEET. One of those was pregnant. One of those had significant mental health issues,
Mm.
which we continue to work with, and one of them had moved away.
Right.
So we do a huge amount of work to get them through the door of the next step.
Yeah. So
And
actually, it's not just about whilst they're here; it's about where they're going on to
absolutely.
as
I
well.
mean, the Creating Unimagined Futures is about everything that we do.
Mhm.
A trip that we take them out. And if you consider these young people are not the sort of young people who would have been invited to go on a trip in their mainstream school. So we took 6 of our young people to New York. We took 8 of them to Barcelona. We're taking 8 of them in at Easter of next year to Paris, to Euro Disney.
Amazing.
That's about, their cultural capital, developing those things. These are things that they wouldn't have imagined they'd be able to do. This week, we're taking 6 young people down to London, and we're giving them some spending money. Those young people who have really done well.
Yeah.
And again, it's just what we want to do is give, give, give,
Mm.
so that they can see that there are people out there. We want to change their perceptions.
Mm.
We want to make them realize that life can be good, that people can be good to them. And if they can change the way that they think
Yeah.
to a more positive mindset, then they can achieve whatever, and that we will walk with them every step of the way.
Yeah, because
And
I think some of the students may not have stepped foot out of Nottingham before.
oh no,
Things
absolutely.
like that, if I'm not mistaken. So
Well, sorry to
I
interrupt.
was just gonna say, for you to give them that opportunity, is unbelievable.
Well, when we went to the New York trip, we had to get a passport organised for one of the young people because he
Wow.
didn't have a passport.
Yeah.
And we do things like that. I mean, we also want them to sort of think about others. So today we've created all these little parcels that are going to be given out to
Saw the
homeless. Yeah, you saw the
Yes.
reception.
Yeah, yeah.
So little bags that we put together with little sort of toiletries and such like that we're
Yeah.
going to give out to the homeless, working with a charity. So that
Amazing.
creating unimagined futures is really everything, including parents as well, because when a child is enjoying their day to day,
Yep.
the way that they are acting at home can also change. And so parents that have had quite a lot of conflict in the home due to the conflict in the school,
Yeah.
can really change. And parents have said to us, you've changed our lives.
Yeah.
Which is such a privilege to be able to impact people.
Yeah,
Such a privilege.
It really is. And if you wouldn't mind, of course, without naming names or anything, could you give us one or two examples of, I guess, success stories that you've had here from students that have come through the doors and then gone on to bigger and better things?
Yeah. Well, you've got photos around this
Yeah.
room of one of them. So he joined us again. It's troubled time in school, just not getting on well, came to us. He really did well, got a huge raft of qualifications, went on to confetti, and now he is going to Sheffield University this year.
Amazing.
We've got, I mean, these are sort of the big things. So we've got students that have gone on to university. One of our students has stayed with us throughout, qualified at the end of year 11, and then went on to play football for Mansfield Town,
Yeah.
which is what he wanted to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, even he would say that if it wasn't for us, he doesn't know what he would actually be doing. But then you've got, when you think about the stories of our young people, so they might not have those big, grandiose endpoints, but some of the young people that we work with, how they manage to get in on the day to day is the miracle.
With the challenges that they're
With the
facing at home.
challenges, absolutely. We go out and I've got a fantastic member of staff who goes out, it's our attendance manager, and she goes out and visits the homes of our students, especially if they're struggling or perhaps their attendance isn't as it should be. So she'll go and visit them. And, she was telling me that she walked into this garden and there was dog mess outside. She walked into the kitchen and they had dishes piled high, electric lights hanging from the ceiling, wires, rubbish on the floor, feces on the floor. Went into the sitting room, takeaway boxes piled up. Just awful, awful environment. And yet this young person is getting up and coming into school. And when they are struggling, we can go even further than that because, my attendance manager, Siobhan, she's absolutely amazing. She organised food parcels for them. I sat with them and worked things out for them, has attended meetings with some of these people with their mainstream schools. So that's what I mean, I suppose, about giving that additional support.
Yeah, and I guess you've got to consider coming from an environment like you've just described into school. Your mindset can't be in the right place as soon as you walk through the doors. And, I guess it's for the staff here to really understand that student, understand where their mindset could be at, which could explain some of the behaviours that they might have, and then how you work and deal with that. So, yeah, it's absolutely amazing the things you're doing. So, again, congratulations on it all. I love this next question, and I'm always interested to ask. Education as a whole, there's often quite a few debates of, well, I think this should be taught in schools. I think that should be taught in schools. If you could change one thing about education today, what would you change?
I would change the system so that you've got alternative provisions aren't where students are placed when they get to the point at no return in mainstream.
Yeah.
I think there should be a pathway for these young people that exists and runs parallel to mainstream, because I think that mainstream, sadly, through no fault of their own, have become very narrow in their offer and their expectations of the way that they have to have students compliantly following a certain pattern. And that makes it very difficult for anybody that falls outside of that.
Yeah.
And I think that there is always a pathway, a different pathway for young people who need something different,
Yeah.
and who, for them, that doesn't work.
Yeah.
But for them, this would work.
Yeah.
And actually, rather than them feeling that they have been a failure to come to this point, actually that's recognized much earlier on,
Yeah.
and that is offered to them as a pathway.
Within school.
Well, I would do a separate,
Separate.
because
Yeah.
there's a challenge there of doing this in school. And I think I've sort of identified the differences that we need in terms of the staff that we have
Yep.
that might be different to mainstream staff. And the challenge for mainstream schools is to use those same staff to teach
Yeah. I understand.
different type of young people. So what I'm saying is that if I could change anything, I would have alternative provisions as a choice for parents, due to the additional needs of their young people, that the mainstreams could sign off on, but to enable them not to feel like they failed to come here, but actually for
That's the
parents to
option
feel
to-
that this is an option
Yeah.
for them. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, when our young people finish with us, they can achieve, certainly within, if you put that same child in a mainstream environment and against a alternative provision, they probably would not achieve here, but they would achieve here.
Yeah.
And the quality of education that they can actually achieve with an alternative provision, certainly here with us,
Yeah.
isn't something that would then prevent them from taking those next steps. It actually supports them to take those next steps. So then, by the time they leave us, they're on the same footing as any child that would be leaving mainstream
Yeah.
at post 16.
And it's not viewed as you went there, you failed, so you came there. And actually, I've experienced that firsthand. I think I spoke to you about it when I came in a few weeks back. With my brother, you know, at the mainstream school that we both went to. I loved school. I got on really well at school. Didn't have any problems. He was the total opposite. And actually, exactly what you've just described there, he could have really done with. But the option wasn't there. So really, really interesting. And thank you for sharing that. Just before I go on to the next steps for Stone Soup and what your plans are for the future, can you just describe to us what is in this brilliant building? Because, you know, even we're in the middle of town, it looks amazing from the outside. You come in, high ceilings, grand building. Just tell us, how have you created the space that you've got within it, and what is within the building here at Stone Soup?
Okay, so we've got two sites now. They're both about over 9,000 square feet each. And we try to mirror so one doesn't feel like it's the sort of, lesser neighbour of the other. And in this building here, I was lucky enough to be able to design it because it was all open plan.
Yep.
And so we've got, starting from the bottom up, we've got a gym downstairs in the basement. We've also got a cinema room with proper cinema seating and a big screen so that we can show PSHE, we can have lessons, we can also use it for awards. Then on the next floor up, we've got our SEN department, and attached to that, we've got our immersive room, which is a space that has a sort of 3D cameras in it.
Yeah.
So you can immerse yourself in the education, which has lots of different programs that we can use there, which is great for regulation for some of our SEN young people, but also it's great for as a teaching aid. And we had that that was sponsored for us by Idea Gen, which was amazing. Then offices on this floor, in this conference room that we've got here. Then the next floor up, we've got a mixture of core English and maths. We've got a wonderful ICT suite with 8 gig maths. We've got a music studio. We've got normal sort of teaching rooms. We've got a library. We've got a what else have we got? We've got a food room, we've got a medical room, we've got the kitchen is the food room, so we deliver food, but we also feed the students, so we've got a canteen area.
Yep.
We've got a games room, because we've got no outside space apart from a little courtyard where we grow vegetables and herbs with
Yep.
the young people, but it's not very big, so they can't go out there and have spare time.
Yep.
So we have a games room instead where we've got a pool table and a ping pong table and seating,
Yeah.
so they can go there at break time and lunchtime. What else we got? Math science lab,
Yeah.
staff room. So the usual things that you would expect to find in a school.
Yeah, amazing, and absolutely loads to offer because, like we said at the start, as I'm sure you have, I've been into a number of alternative provisions, and they don't have anywhere near as much as what you've just described there. So yeah, great to have access to all of that. And I know you've got some exciting plans for the future as well, and you want to continue on the growth trajectory that you're on. Can you just tell us a little bit about that and your plans for the future?
Yeah, absolutely. So alternative provisions and post 16 don't naturally go together, as I'm finding.
Okay.
So we get a degree of funding from the ESFA, the Education Schools Funding Agency, to support young people coming to us. Now, that's at a higher level than you would do at school because we're working on a higher ratio of staff to students. Sadly, though, when students leave year 11 and post 16, that funding doesn't exist in the same way. Post 16 for alternative provision is treated in exactly the same way as mainstream, which is a little bit at odds, I think, because
Yeah.
they've got a huge amount of support free, and then afterwards they suddenly don't have the
Yeah.
same support.
Yeah.
So I'm sort of trying to find out how we can go down the funding route for this. But my plan is that our young people, when they leave us post 16, it's wonderful we manage to get them into college. And we do that because we've got an excellent head of sixth form, Jordan. But although we've, for the past 2 years, have put in place a pastoral sixth form, and that pastoral sixth form is where we still continue to support them in the college to ensure that they don't fall off the edge of their course, and because they still exhibit some of the behavioural aspects. They're still children. They're only 16, 17. And so sometimes the expectations of behaviour in the college can be at a different level than the students can work with.
Yeah.
And so sometimes students will fail, and we don't want them to fail. We also have students who at the end of a course, if we manage to support them to the end of the course, it's, well, what happens next? You've got that sort of cliff edge. And we're talking about young people here who perhaps don't all exist in an environment where they've got family around them who are available to them or are supportive of them. So it's what do they do? Where do they go? And then at that point they can become NEET, and they can become NEET any time before that, so not in education, employment or training. And we want to buck the trend. We don't want that to happen to our young people. We've worked with them so much and they mean so much to us that we want to help them to make that next step into employment. So I thought to myself, what could we do? So I'm thinking, okay, post 16, but we're going to do a different post 16. We can't offer what the college offers in terms of vocational opportunities. We don't have the big sort of workshops and things like that. So what could we do? So I've come up with a program that's going to consist of English and maths to get their grades up to where they need to be. But then a work experience placement that is going to be a substantial quality work experience placement that will be 1 day a week for the whole year, with the view that it's a try before you buy scheme, basically. That if they do really well in that, they can show the employer that they are somebody to appoint. And at the end of that year, hopefully they will appoint them to a post. And the worst that can happen is they've got a whole year
Of experience.
with a great reference at the end of it.
Yeah.
But then what we'll also do alongside that is that we will pay for a vocational qualification. Sadly, that's going to cost us another £5,500 out of what is not very much money
Yeah.
to pay them to go to the college. But we feel that would be great. So it's almost like a level 1 apprenticeship, but
Yeah.
not a level 1.
Yeah.
And remember that, our young people don't have generally EHCPs. We're not a special school.
Mhm.
So they might have additional needs, but they just don't have the EHCPs.
Yeah.
So it's a different sort of funding model.
Yeah.
But we're going to start small. We're going to have 8 young people that are going to be joining us. I've sorted out the space for it. They've got their own sixth form area
Great.
that's they're going to be able to access. I've already been, and then again, this is going back to the executive principal bit. So I've been able to work a lot more with external companies. And so I've already been speaking to lots of different companies, yourself included, about what we're planning to do and to get people on board so that we can create the Stone Soup sixth form bridge to employment. And that's what we're calling it, because that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, amazing. And yeah, we're really, really happy to be on board with that. Obviously, we had a conversation a few weeks back. If there are other companies that are listening to this podcast now that want to get involved, how can they get involved? How can they contact you?
Right. Well, our door does not take much pushing, I'll tell you. Just contact me. So contact me at the academy, contact me via the website, knock on the door, give me a call, anything, and I'll happily meet, happily show you around, happily sort of explain what we're doing. The more the merrier. I want to create this folder of opportunities for our young people to look through, to pick that career that they're interested in, because that's really important. And then support them so that they don't have that cliff edge, so that they can have that job at the end of it. And, that would be absolutely amazing if we could do that for our young people. So that's stage 1 there, Max.
Okay. So there's more stages.
There's more stages.
Let's hear it.
Let's say that's next year. So that's 2025. 2027, this is my next plan. A Stone Soup sixth form hub in the centre of Nottingham that will be for any young person educated in alternative provision pre-16 in the city. Because at the moment, we offer this for us, our students. Internally, our students can access this. But what about all those other young people? Because we're not the only sole provider of alternative provision in the city.
So you're talking about other young people that have got that cliff edge that you're speaking about. Actually, it's great to start internally, but what about everyone else?
We'll pilot it for 2 years. But we're bigger than just us. We want to support Nottingham. We want to show people what can be done with alternative provision. We want to show people how we can support these young people, because if we can get them into jobs, then perhaps they won't choose a different path. And those other paths are not, they're not good. And we don't want that for our young people. And these are children. And we need to continue supporting them in the best way that we can. So that's my next master plan. And anybody that wants to be on board with that, I'd be very much welcome some conversations, because I do need to sort of start thinking, once we've got this sixth form up and running, where is it going to be based? How on earth are we going to fund it? But, it's an enormous responsibility, but an enormous privilege.
And I want to speak to you as well, Kerrie, about how you spoke about, I guess, the person that you almost didn't want to become in the early stages of teaching. How did you transition into being now who you actually are today and who you did want to become? Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it was trial and error, I think. First of all, as I say, when I became that sort of senior leader, I just had to learn, and I think that's where one of the many principles that I was actually under talked to me about walking in people's shoes, And I think that sort of resonated with me. And I started to realize that it wasn't just about this sort of, I know it all. It's about was walking with people
Right.
and supporting people and getting them to be the best versions of themselves.
Mm.
So I think it took some difficult conversations with myself and to me. But I learned that there was better ways to actually get the end result.
Mm.
But then after being at the academy and then having this sort of horrendous head teacher, I thought, well, there's two choices. You either put up or shut up.
Mhm.
And I thought, I can't stay here. I need to move out.
Yeah.
But at that point, the school was really struggling. And even though you're a vice principal, you're not leading the vision of the academy. You get tarred with the brush of failure, I suppose. And so although I wanted to be the head teacher of a mainstream school, I struggled to get that because they'd look at your Ofsted report of where you were and think,
Right.
well, okay, they're not doing too well. What's he going to bring?
And at this stage, you weren't prepared to stay at the school you were at to wait for your opportunity to be head teacher at that school? That didn't interest you?
No.
Yeah.
I just couldn't work with the principal. I thought I
Right.
just can't. I'm not aligned to her
Yeah.
her principles. So I thought I needed to leave. So
Yeah.
I left and then sort of took a sideways step, if I'm honest, to working in AP.
Right.
And
But at the same level you were at in mainstream?
well, it wasn't really. It was leadership.
Yeah.
But it was leadership of an AP, a small AP in a college, their alternative provition aspect of the college. So
Right.
it was dealing with pre-16 students like we
Yeah.
do here, but it wasn't a mainstream environment.
Yeah.
And I took that and I really sort of ran with it, and I was able to sort of see what was required, and I developed that and I grew that, and I was there.
At that point, sorry to interrupt,
Yeah.
it was because I guess you wanted just a change from mainstream and where you're at. What made you apply for that role?
I think with all of my jobs, in everything that I do, I want to do the best. I want to get it right. That's me, part of what I want to
Yeah.
do. I always want to get it right. I really struggle if I get something wrong.
Yeah.
I really berate myself if I get something wrong. So I'm quite hard on myself. I'm probably my worst critic
Yeah.
in that respect. And so whatever I do, I want to do it the best I can do, and I want to make it bigger and better and bring everyone else with me on that sort of journey. So I was there for 2 years, and I did. We grew it, and I felt I did a really good job.
Yeah.
And then I sort of went into another AP environment. So I stayed in AP.
Okay.
And then came here in 2018 as principal.
Right.
And the rest is history. But I mean, I think my growth has been alongside as well the growth of this academy.
Yeah.
And again, I've learnt a lot about myself, and
Yeah.
I've learnt a lot about the people that I work with, and I care for them all
Yeah.
really deeply.
And I think what's really interesting, listening to your story and your journey is along the way you've absolutely learned what not to do, how not to be, and more importantly, how you need to be on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
what impacts people, what puts a positive spin on things, and ultimately the final result of what you do here is going to have a
Yeah.
positive result here with students and staff.
Yeah. And I think it's finding, as a principal, you need both sides of that. You need to find that sort of emotional intelligence, but alongside you've got to be quite hard cut, because you've got to make some difficult decisions.
Yeah.
You've got to have some difficult conversations, and they're things that you have to do and you have to do well, but they're not the best part of my job.
Yeah.
They're
And
things-
what is the best part of your job?
The best part of my job is seeing young people and staff smiling and happy and really enjoying the experience of both being educated here and working here.
Yeah.
I absolutely love that. And we do something at the end of each week. We do a thank yous. We do sunshine moments, and we do a thank you.
Right.
I'll explain. So
Yeah.
on a Friday, we all meet at 2:45, all the staff, all 45 of us, and we go round each member of staff and they pick out that one sunshine moment from the week.
Love
So
that.
which is marvelous. So you don't get people sat in a staff room just moaning about the week. You're going out on a high. What was those amazing moments that you had? And so everyone goes around and does all that, and that's wonderful. And then we end the day with a nice sort of chat, and then we go off for the weekend.
Okay.
And then at 4 o'clock each Friday evening, we send thank yous.
Right.
They're remote thank yous. They go at 4 o'clock to everyone. And as a staff, they can write thank yous to whomever's helped them for the week in terms of staff.
Right.
In terms of the SLT, we write out to every member of staff. We cover all the staff. So every single member of staff receives a thank you on a Friday.
Right.
Of some
So
type.
SLT will write a message on email,
It's all emailed.
Yeah.
And everyone receives it at 4 o'clock. So
Nice.
everyone gets a nice, sweet thing in their inbox
Yeah.
at 4 o'clock on a Friday. And the last Friday of each term, every single member of staff will write a thank you to every single member of staff. So everyone writes 45 thank yous.
Right.
Because it's part of our culture.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
about that recognition
Yeah. Yeah.
that even if somebody's brought you a cup of tea when you were feeling down, perhaps they've opened a door for you, perhaps they've helped you in a class.
Yeah.
You know, you've got to recognise this, and also as an SLT, it helps you to see people,
Yeah. Yeah.
and that's really, and I love it, and that
Yeah.
is just a great joy.
And I think ultimately, you know, when you've got people that are happy in the workplace, that are recognised and feel appreciated, you're going to do a better job.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's the only way you keep them.
Yeah.
You know, money alone won't keep staff in a workplace.
Yeah.
It's got to be about enjoying their job, and that isn't down to me.
Yeah.
That is down to every single member of staff. That's my fantastic middle leadership team, my SLT. They are all amazing. My ops team.
Yeah.
They're just in it because they want to make a difference, and they do every day.
Yeah, and I think even the way you speak about it, you can feel your passion coming through, and you're making a real difference. So amazing to hear. We've got a great network of people that this will be going out to as well. What we will do is we'll put all of your details in the description as well. So if anyone wants to get in touch, please contact Kerrie on the details in the description. Just want to say a huge thank you for, you know, your time this morning and just telling us about everything that you've been through on your journey, really, and also where you're heading. And it's really good to hear. Before we do finish though, I do have some quick fire questions. So I've got 10 quick fire questions that I would like to go through with you. So here we go. Number one, what's your favorite book? It can be education related or not.
Good night, Mr. Oh, what was it? Good night, Mr. Sam, I think it was.
Good night, Mr. Sam.
I think it was.
Okay, not heard it. I'll have to have a look.
Yeah.
Number two, tea or coffee?
Oh, that depends. Depends what time of the day. You know, cup of tea sometimes, mostly. Cup of coffee when I'm flagging.
Yeah, when you need it. When you need to pick me up. Morning person or night owl?
Definitely morning.
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 Me too. What is the best piece of advice that you've ever received?
It's about winning hearts and minds.
Like it. Quote or a motto that you live by every day?
I think it's two things. Firstly, it's to be kind. And I think there's a lot of value in treat others as you would like to be treated yourself. And I think that's really important.
Agreed. If you weren't in education, what would you be doing?
Oh, interesting one. If I wasn't in education, what would I be doing? I've always quite fancied being a nurse.
Amazing. I was going to say, I was going to pull you back into recruitment.
Yeah.
A nurse, great. So helping people, that's the common theme I'm getting. Next question. One thing that you can't live without?
My husband.
Nice. Next question. Favorite holiday destination?
France.
France. Whereabouts?
Normandy.
Nice. I like this next one. what is your go-to karaoke song?
If you heard me sing, you'd probably think nothing. I don't have one, to be honest. I will give anything a go,
Yeah.
but I'm not brilliant at singing, but I'll give it my best. We're doing, strangely enough, this afternoon, we're doing All I Want for Christmas. All the staff, we're all going up into our creative quarter, and we're going to, each year we do a Christmas song, and we'll all stand there and belt out a Christmas song, which will
Nice.
be filmed and then played back for all our embarrassment to the students on their last day of term.
Nice. Well, I'm not going to ask for a rendition now.
No,
I'll
please
wait.
don't.
I'll wait to see the video. And then final question. Describe Stone Soup Academy in 3 words.
Creating unimagined futures.
Amazing. What a way to finish. Kerrie, thank you so much for your time. Really, really
You're more than
appreciate it. And that's a wrap. Thank you.
Thank you.